Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, Diamonds and Washi. My name is Katie. Today, let's talk about diamond painting, wax, and putty. I want to cover how to use these products, how to figure out which one is best for you, and also troubleshoot some common issues that you may run into. I'll be sharing about a variety of different products that are out there, but if you're just planning to use the pink wax that typically comes with the diamond painting kit by default, these tips will hopefully still be helpful for you. You'll find a lot of links below if you'd like to check any of these particular shops out, and please also do keep in mind that these are just my own opinions from my own diamond painting experience, and you're more than welcome to share in the comments if you have different thoughts. I absolutely welcome that. Let's go ahead and start out with classic pink wax, because if you're getting a diamond painting, if you're new to the craft, this is most likely going to be the first wax that you run into. So first things first is just to note that there is usually a thin plastic film on the top of these that you want to peel back. I admit the very first time that I was diamond painting, I didn't realize that was there and was trying to figure out why I could not fill my pen with wax. Now this, if we're just going to load the single placer side, you're just going to want to poke it straight in anywhere. Easier on a flat surface, but you just want to push straight down until you meet that resistance. I sometimes will give it a twist to get kind of a clean break and then pull out, and you'll see that your single placer tip is loaded up with wax. This works just fine with a multi-placer as well of any size, and I use the same technique for loading where I just push straight down, give it a nice little like wiggle around with a little bit of trial and error. Okay, so you can see that's loaded up with pink wax as well. Now, if you decide that you want to expand into other kinds of wax that are on the market, there are a few different ways that they can come. This is called Not Your Mama's Mud from the shop Whimsical Daisies, and this is actually pretty similar in style to pink wax, and you'd load it up similarly where you can just press straight down and twist to get a clean cut and then pull out and your pen will be loaded up. Same with the multi-placer end. So I'm not going to re-demonstrate that because it is the same idea. But what also is really common out there is a wax style and a wax pot like this, where this is more like a traditional, almost like you would see in candle wax. So this is Wee Wax, and then this is Super Sticky Patty Wax from the Patty Wax shop on Etsy. I've actually had this for over 5 years and it's still good. These tins will often last you a really, really, really long time. Now, if you get a wax that's more like this style, you're going to want to scrape instead of pressing straight down. You could try to press straight down to load up your pen. I find that to be less reliable. Instead, if I'm loading up with a wax like this, I'm just going to scrape. And then I'm going to twist my pen, rotate a little bit, just keep scraping. I know there's a lot of extra there, it'll be fine. But this way, I feel like I'm loading it with wax evenly all the way around. And then I just reach up, brush off the extra wax, and it's loaded up, and it's loaded up evenly and like packed in pretty well. So that's how I would load up wax from this kind of more wax pot style that you need to scrape from. I will say that typically I do not like to load my multi-placer from this style of wax. I find it to be pretty tricky, especially because I'm usually using a larger multi-placer. You technically can, though. It's just not something I would personally recommend because I find it to be harder to get an even amount of wax in there, and just trying to fill it up with this kind of wax in general is a little bit trickier. Not impossible by any stretch, but just not something I tend to want to do. Let's chat next about putty. So these were all waxes. I'm just going to swap these so that we can talk about putty next. Typically, I like to use putty in my multi-placer. You 100% can also use it in your single placer. I'm going to show you how to load up both ways. The majority of putty that is out there, if you're buying from a small shop, or even if you're buying just a basic putty like Quake Cold Museum putty, typically it's going to come in more of a flat brick style like this. This is release paper so that it doesn't stick to it. This is from Randa's Crafty Corner. If your putty is coming in a brick like this, my favorite way to fill up my multi-placer or my single placer with putty, let me show you single placer first. This is my clean one. I would probably use the same technique as with the first couple of regular waxes, where I would just, push straight down. Like you can see here, push straight down, give it a few good twists, really against a flat surface. And putty is a little bit more fickle. There we go. We are loaded up though. So there is putty that's ready to go. If you're wondering about how to choose what to use and at what times, I promise I'm going to cover that. We're just starting out talking about loading up our pens first. Now, as far as the multi-placer side, if I have a flat brick like this, I'm going to just go ahead and line it up towards the edge, and I'm just going to press straight down similar to the wax and try to get a nice like clean cut as well, and kind of push and drag like I just showed you. And then I'll use my finger to really push it in there. And then I'll usually just go around the edges with my fingernail, or you could use tweezers if you've got fake nails on, or if you don't really like the feeling of that, you could use tweezers to do the same thing, just kind of like going around the edge to clean it off a bit. And then I'll usually use my fingertips to just go ahead and make sure that I feel like it's in there pretty well. And then you've got putty that's set and ready to go in your multi-placer. There are just a couple of shops, or possibly even like more big box style places, where you may get putty that comes instead in a tin like you see here. And this is Butterfly Effect Wares, their dot dot putty. And when it comes like this, it's not quite the same approach, at least for me. So instead, what I'll usually do is I'll either use just my fingertips, or I'll even use the flat end of my tweezers to scoop some of this out. And then you can also do this with the bricks of putty, but then I'll just roll it out. If you played with Play-Doh as a kid and you were like making Play-Doh snakes, I feel like this is the same idea. I'll roll it out to pretty, well, the same width as you're going to be putting in the multi-placer, and then I just kind of push it in there with my fingers. You could use the flat end of tweezers again if you're not wanting to mess with trying to do this with your fingers. If you're feeling like the putty is really sinking in there and not really flush with the end of the multi-placer super well, you could go ahead and put in some more. You can even use the flat end of your tweezers to push it in there, because if you can see, there's space in there, and once you start trying to pick up diamonds, it's going to push that in anyway, so you want to go ahead and try to fill that up if you can. So there's a few different ways you can go about doing that, but that's another way to load up putty if it's not in a form where you can push down like I originally showed you, but that is an option as well. So those are some of the basic ways that you can go about loading up your pens with wax and putty, depending on the form that they take. And next, I would like to talk a little bit about how to determine which wax or putty is right for you. A lot of this really is going to be trial and error, personal preference, how you tend to diamond paint, and what your climate is like. Let's talk first about how you diamond paint. There are a couple of different things to take into account. First, are you someone that presses really hard when you push down the diamonds to diamond paint, or are you more of a light-handed presser, or somewhere in between? And when you pick up your diamonds, do you tend to pick them up more straight up and down, or at a little bit of an angle? If you are a heavier placer, I personally would recommend, well, when it comes to wax, I think either would work. If you start with one of these denser, kind of scoopy, like stickier putties, you may run into some residue initially when you start diamond painting, but it tends to be a little more dense and packed and lasts a little bit longer, I think. When it comes to putty, whether you're using it in a multi-placer or a single placer, I would tend towards a putty that is drier and not as soft. I feel like Randa's Crafty Corner is that way, as is the Butterfly Effect Wares putty. Diamond Painting Putty by Cat can be as well. And those tend to be a little bit drier putties, less sticky, less soft. And so if you're a heavier placer, those might serve you a little bit better. If you're a lighter-handed placer, I honestly think about any of these can work for you. You might actually prefer a softer, slightly stickier putty like Pure Bliss Wax tends to be. And even just, I have here out of frame, sorry. This is just Quake Hold Museum Putty that you can get from Amazon. And this tends to be a softer, kind of stickier style of putty as well. If you diamond paint, picking up your diamonds and placing them more straight up and down as opposed to at an angle, I think any of these products can work for you. If you pick up at more of an angle, which is what I honestly like to do because I find it helps me with accuracy when I'm placing, especially in my multi-placer, Picking up at an angle, I think, lends itself a little bit more to putty because putty can be, in my opinion, a bit more forgiving than some waxes can be. Again, this is going to be really up to you and your personal preference, though, and a little bit of trial and error, probably. When it comes to climate, I find that wax is less impacted by climate unless you're working with a really soft wax, which I haven't really shown you any today, like standard pink heart wax and the Not Your Mama's Mud. Those are pretty consistent regardless of temperature and weather and climate, in my opinion. And the more super sticky and the wee wax, those tend to be pretty consistent. Maybe if it's super, super hot or really humid, maybe a little tiny bit fussier, but not really. Putty is where I find that climate has the most effect. If you live in, or if it's just seasonally, if it's very hot and very humid, I'm going to point you towards drier, firmer putty. Like I mentioned, Randa's Crafty Corner is a really good one for that. And then Butterfly Effect Wears Dot Dot Putty and Diamond Painting Putty by Kat. And there are, of course, other small shops that have putties that would work in a warmer or more humid climate as well, but those will tend to be a little bit less fussy, leave a little bit less residue, and last a little bit longer before you have to change them out. If you are in really cold weather, really dry weather, you might find that a softer putty actually really lends itself to that well, like Pure Bliss Wax Company or a Quake Cold Museum putty or something similar. That can work really well and tolerate that climate even better. I'm really trying to make recommendations based on what's going to work well for you with diamond painting. Namely, are the drills ideally not going to be falling off while you're diamond painting? Are you not going to have to change out your wax or putty super frequently? And are you not going to be leaving residue and stuff, on the canvas, on the drills, that kind of thing? So, again, a lot of this, like I've said, I know a few times, I'm sorry, is going to be trial and error, but these I feel like are some decent rules of thumb. Hot, humid climates, stick to drier, denser putties. Cold and dry climates, maybe slightly softer and stickier putties are going to actually perform better for you. Now, at a certain point, as you're going along in diamond painting, you'll find it's time to change out your wax or your putty, and how to know when to do that. Really, it's going to be a couple of different things. The main thing is going to be that for wax, if it just stops picking up diamonds easily, then you kind of know it's time to switch it out. Putty, or when it's in your multiplacer where there's so much more of it, like you can see here, you can often tell that it's time to change because it will start to look dirtier, especially if it's a white putty like this. And it might start to almost crumble a little bit. And it's just, maybe you try to pick up diamonds and one or two will start to fall off when you're trying to move them to the canvas. And that's really when you know it's time. My suggestion for how to clean out and reload your pen on either end is, I'm going to say, pointy tweezers. There are some that will say that you shouldn't use metal tip tweezers in a metal multiplacer. I have to be honest with you, in my however many years of diamond painting at this point, I've always used metal tweezers. I tried toothpicks once or twice and it was just a hot mess. I've used metal multiplacers to clean mine out all the time, and I've never damaged my metal multiplacers, but I guess take it with that grain of salt. And I will just kind of dig in and scoop it out. And if there's extra in there, I'll just kind of go around the edges and pick some of it out. There are some, and this is absolutely a possibility too, if you feel like this is the way you want to go. If you're noticing that your putty or your wax isn't picking up drills super well and you don't necessarily want to do a full clean out, you want to try to maybe waste a little bit less, you could instead just grab a tiny amount of additional wax and lay it on top of the wax or putty that's already there, and that can extend the life of it. I find that ultimately I still have to end up changing it out not too long later if I just lay a little bit of new putty or wax on there, because it almost seems like it gets dirty anyway. Now the wax end, if you want to do a full clean out, you can I just do my pointy tweezers again, and I will rotate my pen with pushing my tweezers against outside part of the single placer, and you can see the wax that's coming out there, and then I'll just scoop it out and then toss it. Alternatively, if I'm feeling really lazy, honestly, you guys, I will sometimes, if my wax isn't wanting to pick up anymore, while I don't like to load new putty on top of old putty, wax, I care less because often the wax is just getting pushed through the metal tip into the plastic barrel anyway because it's almost always open at that end. And so if I just go in and I just keep loading more in, it's probably going to push a little bit of that wax. Like you can start to see it going into the barrel there, and I'll go ahead and load new wax on top of the old, and it's fine. So, yeah, those are the ways that I would go about changing out my wax or putty and knowing when it's really time to do that. Now, let's go ahead and talk about some common issues that you may run into with using wax or putty and some solution suggestions that I have for you. The very first thing I want to talk about is I feel like the most common issue I see brought up, which is that people will say my putty is too sticky or too soft. The solution I wanted to suggest is one that my friend Lindsay from Emeralds and Fairy Lights had mentioned to me, and I gave it a try for myself and actually had some decent luck. And that is to add cornstarch to your putty. Now, do this at your own risk, you guys. This is just if you have bought some putty that is too soft and you just want to ideally be able to still use it, not waste it, that kind of thing, maybe you're on a budget. Cornstarch is really inexpensive. This is an option. So I know this looks so weird, but I put some cornstarch on a plate, and here's a bit of putty that is a little bit on the softer side that I had experimented with adding a little bit of cornstarch to previously. And I would start small. I ended up ultimately adding a decent amount to some different putty before, but I'll just kind of pick up some cornstarch with it, and then I'll start if you've ever played with slime, I feel like it's that same kind of concept where this is just kind of folding it in a little bit, and you'll feel the difference pretty quickly. And I can feel like it's a little bit less sticky and tacky. And I've done this the past week or so, like really actively experimenting with it. And it has made quite a difference. It's not exactly the same texture as if you got, I don't know, a different kind of putty that already is a little bit drier and denser, but it certainly is a good way to salvage putty that you otherwise find is too soft or sticky. Another option, if you don't necessarily want to go that whole route, and especially if you run into this with wax, because I haven't tried adding cornstarch to wax, so I suppose you could I don't know if like taking the pen with the wax in it and like dipping it in the cornstarch might help with stickiness. I don't know. I haven't experimented with that, but maybe I'll have to. That's one option. The other thing that you could do that I mostly would do prior to trying out cornstarch is if it was too sticky, either the wax or the putty, I would take that end and I would literally just dab it on my pant legs or like my shirt. Get it a little bit dirty with some dust or lint from your clothes. I know some people are gonna be like, what? But honestly, honest to goodness, I heard about this just a couple months after I very first started diamond painting. It was my go-to solution for a while, especially if I was about to be placing special drills, which I have more tips for that in a second. Just dabbing it a few times on my pant leg, it does help, especially if you've just freshly loaded it and it's really sticky and soft and giving you trouble. So that's how I would handle if your wax or your putty is too sticky or too soft. Now, if it is too dry, if your wax is too dry, you probably just need to swap it out. For example, if you're using this pink heart wax, if you just let this sit out like this in perpetuity, it's gonna dry out. That's why even, the wax like this, it comes with a lid, so you're sealing it. Typically, if you get wax like this, that's why it's got the plastic film. You could cover this back up. You could pop it I'd probably put it in like a little resealable bag, like a little Ziploc baggie or something. Sometimes they come in little caddies. Anyway, if what's in your pen, if the wax is too dry, it's probably time to change it out. Honestly, probably the similar solution for putty too. But if you've got putty that, like in a square, is too dry for you, I've had a harder time finding good solutions for this. The main one that I have tried is taking putty, like this Quakehold Museum putty that I just got off Amazon. And because this is so soft as well, kind of combining that can maybe help. But if any of you are watching and have better suggestions for if you have putty that's too dry, I'd love to hear what they are, because I've tried out some different things with some not as great a luck. But to be fair, this is an issue I don't see brought up almost at all. I rarely see people talking about like, oh, my putty is too dry. It's 99% of the time I'm hearing people say my putty is too soft or too sticky. So cornstarch, dab it on your clothes, dirty it up a little bit. Those would be my suggestions for that. Another issue that you may sometimes run into is when it comes to putty and overflowing multi-placer. If you're going along and you're diamond painting, and as you're, placing and everything, you're noticing that you always have a bunch of putty coming over the sides, and sometimes it's even getting stuck in the glue, which is always, a huge pain. You may have too much putty in there, and you just want to go around and scrape off the excess either with your fingernail or with tweezers. And alternatively, if you're trying to diamond paint and you're always noticing that diamonds are falling off, especially once you've tried placing a few times and it starts to get the grooves in the putty there, you may not have enough putty and you might want to try loading a little bit more in. Sometimes though, if when you're going along in diamond painting and you're trying to pick up, drills from your tray and always, one or two are wanting to fall off, that may mean that either there's not enough putty or it's time to change out your putty because it's too dirty and too gummy and just, needs to be changed. Alternatively, honestly, often when I'm diamond painting, I find myself, even with my favorite go-to putties, like this pen over here is one that I've been using for my current project regularly. I didn't want to do all my demos with the 12 placer because many of you probably aren't using a 12 placer. Even with my favorite putties, I'll often see over time a little bit of putty kind of coming over the sides like this, often more. It's now an ingrained habit for me to just go along and push the putty back up and flatten it in. And I do this every so often, and it doesn't even feel like extra work to me. It's just automatic at this point. So I do find myself having to do that, but it just takes a second and doesn't tend to bother me, but you can give that a try too. It is going to take some practice for you to figure out what's the right amount of wax or putty to have in your single or multi-placer for how you diamond paint that's give me the least amount of headache for you. So those are just some suggestions I have for kind of how to tell, do you have too much or too little, or when's it time to change it out? When it comes to wax overflow, a lot of times when you first load wax into your single placer or your multi-placer, the first few drills that you place, you may notice that there's a little bit of extra wax overflow. There's a couple of ways to handle this. You can either just, if it's on the canvas itself, you can brush it off with fingers or a soft cloth, or even use a toothbrush to kind of brush it out. But if there's a lot of like sticky residue, if you're using a stickier hard wax like these, and you know that this is always a problem where you're like, oh, the first 2 or 3 diamonds that I place, there's always this residue and then it's fine and the wax lasts me for a while. You can have like a sacrifice drill. I have this little like trash drill container with trash drills that, have tabs or are stuck and I'm not going to use. And so if you wanted to, if you've got this pen with the sticky wax with residue on it, you could just go into here and press really hard on one of these diamonds and get all that residue off. This is not the best example. And then it's like a sacrifice drill, and you can see there's a little groove now in the wax, and you're not going to be using that drill anyway, and then the residue is gone, and you can just proceed to diamond paint without having to mess with that actually being on a diamond that's on your canvas. Another issue that is pretty common to run into, honestly, especially when you are trying out a new product or getting the hang of diamond painting in general, is sometimes getting some wax or putty stuck in the glue on your canvas or even around the drills. And my best suggestion, if you're going along and you're diamond painting, say you're multi-placing and you accidentally just brush part of the putty like in the glue and it gets stuck on the canvas, this is not a good example. But what I just then will do is if there's a little bit on there, I'll just go in there with some sharp, fine tweezers, and I will just kind of try to pick it off the canvas. Same if there's putty or wax that I can't quite get out of in between other diamonds there, is I'll just scrape it out with tweezers, and that usually does the trick. And honestly, Sometimes if there's just a little bit of putty that gets stuck in the glue, you know what? I just put drills on top. If it's just a little bit, I just put drills on top of it. If the glue's good, it's going to stick. It's going to be fine. No one's going to know. The last really, really common issue that I wanted to mention was dealing with placing special drills. I have two kinds of suggestions for you because this can be such a headache. The worst thing ever is, say I've just put some new putty in my pen and I'm ready to start going and open up my section, or my next color is going to be an AB. These drills that have this iridescent coating on the top. These are notoriously a pain to work with if you are working with fresh wax or putty. Two options for you. One is to just wait until your putty or wax is dirtier. You can either tap it on your clothes, or wait until you've placed a bunch of other colors and it's not super fresh anymore. It's just kind of gotten a little less, sticky and fresh. And then try to use your special drills. That will work. Another option is to, and this is kind of wild, but just get it wet. Dip it in water, or this really fun accessory from Tracy's DP World that they call lily pads. It's a little sponge that you fill up with water, which I just did. When you get it, it comes with, where's that tiny little piece? I can't find it, but it's this really, there it is. It comes with this little thin, like this is the size of the sponge, and when you fill it with water, it expands. It's not like soaking wet, it's just damp. And when you dip either your single or your multi-placer into it, just making it slightly damp adds a slight water barrier and makes special drills so much easier to pick up and place without you having to worry about then the special drill not wanting to come off of your pen or getting gunk on it, or even if you're using like a really sticky wax, sometimes it'll literally rip the AB iridescent coating off the tops of these diamonds. Now, you can use a product like this, or if you want to just test this out without investing in a little product like this, they're not expensive. You could just use a wet paper towel. I can usually get a few drills placed out of it before I need to dip again. But again, it's not like a big thing of water. It's just slightly damp, and that slight water barrier adds just enough there that it makes it the perfect middle ground, and you run into a lot fewer issues. I would use that with ABs, crystals, metallics, anything that's just kind of non-standard and has more of a fussy coating to it. Anyway, these were my overall thoughts on how to use wax and putty when it comes to diamond painting. My goals and my expectations for my own diamond painting experience is that I want to just not even have to worry about it as much as possible. I'd like to be able to put wax and putty into my pen and have it last me for at least a few hours without me having to swap it out. I typically have to swap out my putty more often than my wax. My wax will usually last longer, but that also is because I use my multi-placer a lot. I even will use my multi-placer for single placing. So it's seeing more wear. But usually for me and the putty that works for me in my diamond painting style and my climate, that will usually last me several hours. I usually diamond paint a few hours a day, and I'm changing out my putty every few days. Wax is even longer. It just kind of depends, and weather does have an impact on it as well. Like I know I've said a few times, I do have to say that a lot of this is going to be a bit of trial and error, which is why I wanted to give you some suggestions for if you've bought a product, it's not working ideally for you. Here are some ideas for how to try to make it work, because especially if you're on a budget, like a lot of us are, it's really hard to justify getting a bunch of different products to try. And so trying to make it work with what you have, including honestly this pink wax that is a default, standard, just comes with the toolkit that comes with your kit. This stuff works great, you guys. You don't have to go out and buy other products. But if you're wanting to try out other things, different consistencies, depending on your weather, if you want something that's scented, that's one of the fun perks for a lot of these small shops is scented products. Some of them use all organic ingredients if that's important to you. And I feel like supporting small shops, that's a great option too. So I will have some links for you below, but keep in mind it's not comprehensive. And I would love to hear from you in the comments if you have any other tips that you would like to share, or if you have any issues that you have run into that you would like help with, or other suggestions, I would love to see those in the comments, and I'll do my best to get back to you. Either way, though, I hope this video was helpful. I'm trying to do more of these how-tos and tutorials, kind of refreshing the ones that I've done 5+ years ago at this point. So if there's anything you would like to see me cover in particular, I'm also always open to that feedback. But I will have my diamond painting how-tos and tutorials playlist linked below if you are new to the craft and want to see some more demos and whatnot. I'm always happy to try to help. And I also do unboxings and reviews from a variety of different companies here on my channel. I would love to have you as part of my community if you'd like to subscribe. It's all diamond painting all the time here, and I'd love to craft alongside you. But either way, thank you for watching. I hope you are doing very, very well. Enjoy your diamond painting, and I will chat with you in the next one. Bye, guys.